Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Real Clear Politics Takeaway for Thursday, January 7th. I'm Tom Bevan, co-founder and president of Real Clear Politics.
And I'm Carl Cannon, Washington Bureau Chief. Bureau Chief in a very eventful city yesterday, Tom. Yeah, I don't know. Football, there's nothing going
someone
on in
tweeted,
politics.
I think it was maybe Dave Burge or someone that said, I want 2020 back. Give me my 2020 back. Let's talk about what happened in the Capitol yesterday, Carl. Obviously, I've never seen anything like this in my lifetime. I doubt you have in yours, although you're significantly older than me, 50, 60 years maybe. You've been there a lot longer than I have. But what are your impressions of what went down there yesterday?
Well, Tom, first of all, I mean, we should have a sense of history and not just, in the 1930s when World War I veterans were, machine gunned at the foot of the Capitol after camping there for months. And look, there have been a lot of demonstrations at the Capitol. What was different yesterday and was shocking to people was occupying the Capitol. We've seen that at college. They occupy presidents' offices in colleges, but this was the seat of democracy during what should have been a pro forma acceptance of the Electoral College. And so it was more than frightening members of Congress and their staffs. It also seemed like an assault on the mechanisms of democracy itself. And I think that's what shocked people even more than the violence. The violence wasn't, there was some vandalism and breaking of windows and but there wasn't, it wasn't a bloodbath, although one woman was shot by the U.S. Capitol Police and 3 or 4 other people died. I don't know if it was heart attacks. The authorities aren't saying, but it was the symbolism.
Yeah, it really was, and
it's not supposed to be a mob. It's not supposed to be mob rule.
And the videos that I saw, there were a lot of folks just wandering around and taking selfies, at the dais and all sorts of things. But you're right. I mean, obviously, the video of the folks breaking into the Capitol, I thought, obviously, anybody who's involved in any of that stuff needs to be prosecuted. That just cannot be tolerated in a democracy. But what about the media's handling this, Carl? Because, there's been a lot of talk.
Well, wait, before we get to the press, Tom, something you said is interesting there. During the summer, hundreds, if not thousands of American businesses were broken into, looted. Anytime you break glass, it looks like a violent thing. Liquor stores and hotels and, a police station in Minneapolis was burned to the ground. And anytime a building is attacked like that, it looks violent. And there was, like I say, thousands of these incidents. But breaking the glass in the Capitol is different. It struck people, differently. And,
right.
And it should, because that, the last time that building was breached that way, the British burned it. That was 1814.
Right.
That's not what we do. We defend that building. And the 9/11 terrorists were sending a plane either to attack it or the White House. The 9/11 Commission thought it was probably the Capitol. We were never sure. But that's something we defend because it's defending the country itself.
So before we get to the media, let's continue on this. But because one of the questions is how much blame does Donald Trump bear for this? Obviously, there was this rally earlier in the day where Trump got up and spoke and said basically, hey, when this is over, we're going to march down Pennsylvania Avenue and cheer on our members of Congress, trying to get them to support this idea of this challenge of the certification of the Electoral College votes. So how much blame does Trump bear for what happened in Washington yesterday?
Well, I'll give my answer, and then I'll ask you the same question because I've been thinking about that. I wrote about it this morning. There's in liability in civil law. This is a doctrine. How much of a percentage was a car wreck, one driver, or another? I'll say it was 100% the president's fault. I would find him liable. He encouraged these people to believe that the election was stolen from them. It wasn't. That's a very serious charge to make. He really got them thinking that they were defending democracy instead of attacking democracy. Then he attacked his own vice president. Then he sent the mob to the Capitol. He said he was going to march with them. He didn't. It was a cowardly thing. He went back to the comfort of the Oval Office. He sent them, and he told them to pressure Congress and Mike Pence. So if I'm on the jury and this is a civil tort, 100% of the damages should be paid.
But he didn't encourage the violence, Carl. I mean, I watched his speech. He said, we're going to go down there and we're going to cheer them on and we're going to try and give them support. I mean, he in no way said we're going to go down there and break into the Capitol and destroy property or any of that. And obviously...
Tom, he told them an election
that is not the same, Carl. I agree with you, but that is not the same as encouraging violence.
For 2 months.
It's just not. Okay.
Well, I grant you.
So he's 90% responsible.
But he got these. But Tom, he got these people thinking they were defending the country, and when this summer, when people march under banners by leftists by any means necessary, well, those words have meaning, and those people then do things to police and businesses by any means necessary. That was the equivalent, and this is the president of the United States. He decided. During this transition, he's not going to be a constitutional officer. He's going to be a street rabble-rouser. That's his decision that he made.
And we have a story on RealClearPolitics this morning from Phil Wegman and Susan Crabtree talking about how what happened yesterday is going to affect his legacy as he leaves office. Real quickly, Carl, Democrats are saying asking Pence to invoke the 25th Amendment. People are saying he should be impeached and removed from office. Even with only 2 weeks left, that he no longer deserves to be there, and it would bar him from ever holding office again, potentially, from a 2024 run. What do you make of that? Is that too harsh of a reaction, too sort of knee-jerk of a reaction, or do you think that Donald Trump really does deserve and need to be ejected from office here with just two weeks before the inauguration of Joe Biden?
Well, briefly, those are two separate things. It's obviously not practical to impeach a president with 2 weeks left. But invoking the 25th Amendment, which the Washington Post called for, I think the National Association of Manufacturers called for.
Democrats, and Jerry Nadler and others, yep.
Growing number of Democrats are calling for. That's a different thing, because that suggests that he's impaired and can't do the job. You can't just do it because you think he's a lousy president, or But his mental state does seem to be deteriorating, and I'm not with him every day, but people, members of his cabinet and sub-cabinet have quit in the last 24 hours, and one of them, I think it was Mick Mulvaney, said he's not the same person he was 8 months ago. If the President of the United States, if his mental state is deteriorating, as it appears from a distance to be, and if it's and the people up close realize that he's unstable and no longer able to function as president, I think they're obliged to remove him today.
We'll have to see
if that's what they believe, Tom, and they'd know better than you or I.
All right.
There with him.
So moving on to the media, Carl, and the media's portrayal of this. I mean, nothing gets the Washington press corps more, I was going to say outraged or in sort of than a story about themselves and about, we had reporters inside the Capitol. What about the media's portrayal of this? And certainly as conservatives are pointing to how they handled the quote-unquote mostly peaceful protests that took place over the summer in cities around the country.
You didn't hear that phrase, mostly peaceful protesters, yesterday.
Front page of the Wall Street Journal,
had hundreds of people
New York Times, Washington Post all say the mob, right? I'm not sure that any of the folks who protested this summer and the looting and rioting I don't think they were ever called a mob.
Well, if they were immediately denounced as racist for doing so. You couldn't even call them rioters, even while the film is showing them buildings being torched and buildings being looted. You couldn't call them looters or rioters. And some progressives said that this was okay, that buildings don't. Some guy wrote a piece in Philadelphia, buildings matter too. He was fired from his job in journalism. So, but this building matters. Now, as I said before, this building does matter.
Your average, liquor store or whatever.
Your average liquor store. But the double standard was I got whiplash. I mean, I should have thought the cable news guys got whiplash, because before they would say, "Oh, this is a heavy-handed police presence," and then they're saying, "Where's the cavalry?
Bring in the National Guard."
Part of the problem here, Tom, is that it's all about go call it the National Guard. It's all about opinions these days instead of and emotions instead of reporting. I noticed a reporter. It was Fox News, so it's not some left-wing outfit, and he's walking down with some middle-aged couple, that you expect to find a line at Safeway or Walmart, and it perfectly pleasant people, and he shoves a mic in one of their faces. He's wearing a mask, so he's a little muffled. He says, what do you think of the violence at the Capitol? And the guy kind of looked like he was outside. He hadn't been watching television. And the woman said, what are you talking about? And instead of saying, well, these people broke in, he just said, see, we're being attacked. And a mob came around. He wasn't interested in eliciting their views or, finding out what motivates these people. So, that's just sort of the debasement of reporting that we've discussed in the past. It's all emotion. But you would have wished for a little more intellectual consistency yesterday. But that doesn't excuse what happened, and it certainly doesn't excuse.
No, I agree with that. And we did see there was one video of a guy who, I guess they got a hold of the AP's camera equipment and was smashing it up. There was another picture that showed someone had written on a door inside the Capitol, "Murder the media," which obviously got people's attention.
Wait a minute, was Antifa there? That's their thing.
So, I mean, look, people have been saying, certainly members of the media have been saying for a long time that Donald Trump has threatened the media. He's getting his supporters to threaten the media. And there was a little bit of that yesterday in terms of those two incidents that I mentioned. But by and large, it was more the coverage that struck me, the contrast in the coverage from, a few months ago to yesterday.
Well, that's right. But again, this seemed like an attack on the government, on self-government, Tom. And that's the context of this. What Mike Pence was supposed to do was just accept the count of the Electoral College. And for Donald Trump to send a crowd up to Capitol Hill to pressure these people under the guise of stopping a steal while trying to steal an election, it's difficult. I think it's difficult for reporters there, especially if they have people in the street who they feel are being menaced, to stay objective, because the theme here was that a president misbehaving, and that's not like a community activist misbehaving. That's a new feature and not a welcome one in the United States and in 2021.
All right, Carl. Well, we'll leave it there for this morning. I'm Tom Bevan, co-founder and president of RealClearPolitics.
And I'm Carl Cannon, Washington Bureau Chief of RealClearPolitics, and this has been the RCP Takeaway for Thursday, January 7th, 2021, a year that already seems a lot like 2020.